afternoon. My name is Rizwan Mahmood. I'm the co-founder and CEO of GuardWare. And welcome to the webinar, Where Does Cardholder Data Actually Hide? Lessons from the front line of PCI scoping. So before we begin, some basic housekeeping. There is a chat option at the bottom there. So if you have questions or things that you want to ask, please do so. There will also be polls that we'll be running through the session, and I will highly recommend everybody to pitch in because that helps us to drive the conversations and also helps to evaluate what people are thinking. So let's get into this one. So today's session is for everybody who's a PCI practitioner, QSAs, consultant, assessment leads, and anyone who wants to look behind the curtain to see best practice in handling payment card industry data and PCI DSS standard, in line with PCI DSS standards. Now, I find this really interesting because I'm a cybersecurity professional and I deal with all different types of data and data challenges. But when it comes to cardholder data, I find something fascinating that think about how we handle cash in the physical world. Every note is counted, logged, reconciled, audited. In reality, cardholder data is no different. It's actually a way to access our cash and money. And yet, what we find interesting when we are dealing with this kind of information is that the cardholder data is sitting in emails, in archives, in spreadsheets, in file shares, in all people's workstations. It's all over the place. And it's not really a failing of the people doing their job, right? I mean, they have to get the work done. But this creates structural challenges, I would say, in how PCI scoping has to be done or is normally done. I mean, in many places around the world, manual and sample-based sampling is still the norm, dependent on clients knowing and disclosing where their information is really present or actually knowing where it is actually present. So the question is that the right way to do this? And is this enough? And that is what we will be exploring today. So in today's session, we are going to do three things. First, we are going to sit down with, well, Kashif Hassan, a good friend of ours, who is the Director of Cybersecurity and Information Technology from Risk Associates, one of the leading PCI QSA firms operating across South Asia and Middle East. And we are going to talk about the real challenges QSAs face when scoping an environment. Second, I'll walk you through a short demonstration of how we can use automated discovery mechanisms to speed this up and what works in practice. And third, a bit of fun about war stories, different places and locations where you wouldn't expect cardholder data to really be, and no data flow diagram would have ever covered that, and yet it was present in those locations. So welcome, Kashif. Welcome to the webinar.
Thank you, Rizwan. Happy to be here.
Great. So let's start with a bit of introduction about yourself and about Risk Associates before we dive into the more interesting areas about scoping.
Perfect. But by the way, you have the topic, the scoping is very close to my heart as a QSA. This is the most interesting discussion we ever have when we're doing a PCI DSS assessments. But let's just stick on the question right now. Don't jump ahead. So Risk Associates Cybersecurity Compliance and Advisory Firm. We are PCI QSA firm since 2008, and the PCI Council was formed in 2006, and we are among the first ones that joined the PCI Council as a QSA company. So which means that we have been doing PCI DSS assessment through version 1, 2, 3, and now the latest one, 4.0.1, and we have watched the standard evolve over the whole time. In the PCI domain, we are also doing PCI PIN, PCI 3DS, PCI Secure Software Framework, both the Secure SDLC and the Secure Software, and we are also ASV company. But this is not the PCI that we do only. We are CREST approved for our penetration testing practice, vulnerability assessment. We are also ISO 27001 certification body, and in a nutshell, we provide our clients one-stop solution for their all international and the local regulations or the cybersecurity frameworks. Okay. Uh, what that means particularly is when we walk into the client's environment, we are rarely looking the PCI in the isolation. We are usually looking at PCI alongside international and the regional frameworks, data protection frameworks, the PDPL, and GDPR, and increasingly ISO 42001, as entities start deploying agentic applications, the agents in the business applications, like fraud detection, like payment decisions. So the compliance one for us is not a standalone exercise. It sets a much bigger picture for every client we work with. Geographically, we have offices across the globe. We are in Australia, we are in Canada, UK, GCC, Bahrain, Saudi Arabia, as well as Qatar, and in South Asia, we in Bangladesh and Pakistan. Primarily, we work with the payment ecosystem like the banks, fintech, payment processors, service providers like data centers are also. And I would say that geographically spread is actually one of the interesting things about our uniqueness, right? Because we see the same underlying problems to show up in a different technical environment. That's why we're also in the PCI Gear member, where we provide the kind of working with a tier one regional banks running infrastructure that is very, very old, and a cloud native fintech that launched a few months back, a completely different technology stack, and we are able to bring the perspective from both. Okay. So that's also helped in our discussions with the different entities, different regulators. So how we can help our make sure that to uplift the ecosystem of any country. For me, I have more than 20 years of experience. I started my career as a software developer, engineer, and also worked in different countries, in US, Australia, UK, Canada. And then I joined the Risk Associates and jumped into the cybersecurity consulting. Today, I'm leading my QSA practice as well as the lead auditor. So personally, I sit across both the sides of the table. Before consulting or the security, I was being audited by different entities, working for Morgan Stanley, Accenture. So that's kind of a nice, very interesting journey up to now. Yeah.
Yeah, that sounds really interesting. And with all that diverse experience and also a global, like say, diverse kind of experiences. So let's get into the PCI scoping side of things. So let's start with the basics of stuff, right? So what is scoping process? What is PCI scoping process? What does it look like? And how do you identify where cardholder data really exists? So yeah.
So if we by the definition, very basic definition, okay. So scope of the any PCI assessment card data environment comprises of people, process, and technology. Okay. And when we say people, process, and technology, it is basically um, um, all the everything they store, process, or transmit. And one very important thing is anything that can impact the security of the card data. Okay, so the scoping is generally one of the most important part of the PCI DSS assessment, as I said in the introduction. Like, it's very close to my heart, because I always say, once you lock down the scope accurately, 70 to 80% of PCI assessment is already done.
All right.
Everything downstream, testing, sampling, the whole assessment, depending on getting the boundary right at the start. So what does scoping actually involve in practice? It is just not like network diagram or the data flow diagram. There are a whole set of scoping artifacts an entity needs to maintain, like asset inventory, data flow diagram, network diagram, cardholder data metrics, showing every location where cardholder data lives, a third party service provider list. So in a nutshell, what you're saying that we have to identify everywhere where card data can exist. And our job as a QSA, I always mention, as a job of QSA, is to validate the scope, not to define the scope. Okay. So as a QSA, we receive all these kind of artifacts and we validate them. We are not just taking the entity's word. Okay, I have this four system where card data is based on our experience, based on our discussions. We can see that whether the documentation they're providing us, the artifacts they're providing us, reflects the reality or not. Okay, and here is uh, uh, here is what we constantly, most of the scoping items are still in spreadsheets. Okay, this is reality. Asset inventory in Excel, cardholder data metrics is in Excel. There's nothing wrong. I mean, it's just how organizations have been doing it, but it creates a specific problem for us as an assessor. Take
Mm.
the take the CSG metrics as an example, let's say. Okay, there's a
Okay.
document that's supposed to list every location where cardholder data is stored. When we receive it, our task is to validate it.
Okay.
And honestly, reality is that they're almost always location the entity does not even know, not because they are hiding something intentionally, but they don't, because the exactly the kind of BAU we have been talking about. In a bank, let's say, give an example, there's so many departments, there's so many people, there's so many different work, and there's a real challenge sits. If it is not in database and application, that is the problem. Because in the technology, when I say that databases or applications or the servers, they're very well documented. They always reflect on the network diagram, data flow diagram. Everyone knows that they are in the scope. The problem, in my opinion, as a QSA, is the unstructured data.
Mm.
I mean, I'm not saying that can be issue, that can be issue, but it
Yeah.
is it is really little bit, I mean, less problematic as compared to unstructured data. Okay, cardholder data that ended up in the email, someone forwarded a transaction file or troubleshooting, or a scan got attached to a support ticket and it's just sitting there. It's in an inbox. Okay, or is it a file server, shared drive, an old backup folder, an export uh, caused or happened, project ended, but no one cleared or deleted the data properly. Okay, none of that is one CHD metrics, because as a metrics, it's only a good example I'm trying to write down, but nobody remembers an attachment from 2021. I mean, if you have emails in your data in your inbox, how do you remember that I would receive the card data or the Excel file? So now for our job become, as I mentioned, validating the scope. So we are validating a document that is already incomplete, right? And
Yeah.
doing that validation manually means going location by location, searching unstructured data. For that means someone would have been open every copy, every file and checklist in exist in the server or in a desktop, or in your mailbox or in your file. That is actually, that is searching content at a scale that is not even possible. Okay, so and that doing that by hand across the enterprise environment is really cumbersome, right? Realistically, it doesn't get done. So, which is exactly why these locations stay invisible after year and year, assessment after assessment, until something else happens, a breach, a DLP alert, or some regulatory or some third party audit resurface
Mm.
and the entity find it the hard way. So so you mean see that
It's
that the scoping is the real challenge in any. By the way, we should not restrict it in only in a PCI. We are talking about PCI, but it's a challenge for any compliance that we are working on.
Yeah, so it's I think I can summarize in one line what you have said. It's is you can't manage what you don't know.
Yeah,
So I so I
that's absolutely
guess
right.
so I guess the key challenge, which is very interesting. I mean,
Mhm.
we deal with so many different environments, and in our cyber work, obviously, with our products, etc. That a lot of time we would consider that, well, most of their data wouldn't that be in a database. But I think the key
Mhm.
problem always happens with this unstructured data moving to all different locations, and the amount of effort that would actually take to actually uncover that. I can't even begin to fathom the amount of time and effort. And if you really want to do a clean job, really, I think you have already covered one of the next questions that I was going to ask about unstructured data. So I think what you mentioned also is quite interesting. One of the things we were talking earlier, and you talked about marketing teams having data dumps, and because they had to do their job. I guess how common is it that it's like normally people think that all my data should be in this location, but oh, it was in another location. So how common is that, and is it common for the internal teams to miss that?
So what do you think?
Yeah,
I mean,
obviously, yeah,
I mean, how common is it? Generally, more common than people assume.
yeah,
That's a very simple answer. The reason it stayed hidden in the structural, it is not the system that anyone would think.
mm,
And it's not a network diagram. It's not a segment. You can't segment it.
yeah,
Okay, so it is very difficult. So as I mentioned that how the people expect the banking or the reality of the life is, like everyone is just going here and there. The data is going here and there. Okay.
yeah,
Marketing team requests, as you mentioned about the marketing team, let's take an example of marketing team. They request a customer data export to build a campaign, a promotional mailer or a loyalty tier, or whatever that they need to relaunch the re-engagement push, something like that. Depending on how the data export was built, the query was built. Okay,
yeah,
because the information that the request goes to the particular department or maybe the DBA, they do not understand the significance of this. They just dump the data, and it can carry more than the names and email addresses that were initially requested. Okay, so
yeah,
they basically why they need the information. They just need the information by the name or email address or the address or the mailing address, what the case is. But we have seen the exports where card reference field simply was not excluded. It is they just take a dump and just email them. Okay,
yeah.
now
Yeah. It seems to be like I can well imagine now that I start to think how the process
mm,
would actually work. It will be quite a common occurrence, and we do this in all different types of data
yeah.
types. And so it begs a question that what are the risks if a company fails to properly cover all possible locations? What is the implication on them?
Uh, uh, this is really the heart of why scoping matters so much.
Okay.
Okay, because every risk downstream tracks back this one to the one failure point, not knowing where where all the cardholder data actually is. Because
Mm,
no, it is in the emails, the file shared. Maybe you shared or emailed that same file to your some service provider. Okay, some third party. Okay, so start with the direct one. Breach exposure. If cardholder data is sitting in the location that was never identified, it is the location that was never protected. No encryption, no access control, no monitoring, none of the control PCI actually requires for the card data. Okay, because you cannot apply a control to something that you don't know that exists. That unprotected location becomes the easiest path in for an attacker. It is
mm,
it is usually not the well-defined CD that gets breached first. It is forgotten file share, the old export sitting in some bin box, and because very true. Uh, uh, we also do the attack surface management, dark web monitoring for our clients. So we have seen that sometimes the cardholder data information pops up in the dark web, and when we talk to our clients, they say, "Oh, by the way, I don't know how it gets exported done," and then they start digging and digging, and they find out that this was because they emailed the file to some third party, and the third party was got breached. Okay, so they were
mm,
compromised. So, so secondly, the compliance failure.
yeah.
So that uh, under the PCI version 4.0.1, the entity is required to confirm with evidence that cardholder data is not sitting outside the defined CDE. Uh, if, as an assessor, we find out that that location that was not in the entity's documented scope, that is not in a not a it is not a minor finding. I mean, it calls into the question the entire scope confirmation process into that, and it can mean that assessment itself has to be revisited. Okay, because of the foundational challenge, we know where our data is turns out to be false. So
Yeah. Yeah.
so the next maybe the we can say talk about this, thinking more and more about it, that incident response becomes very cumbersome, very chaotic. If breach happens and the cardholder data turns up somewhere that entity didn't know that about, the first question anyone asks is how long it has been there, who has access to this information, to this data. Without a clean scoping history, you cannot answer that this with the confidence, right? And you end up doing forensic discovery in the middle of middle of crisis instead of consulting documentation or the containing the breach you should have already done. Okay,
Yeah. So
so
it's yeah. So it's
yeah, go
quite
ahead.
a quite a cumbersome, I can well imagine. So basically you fail your compliances, definitely if that is happening. So it looks like to be a key area for focus. And
I
obviously,
before
yeah,
I want to add one more thing that
yeah.
is very important. I mean, the question that you've been asking is a possible. I mean, what's the possibilities? So one thing is a financial exposure, because regulator and maybe
Mm.
card brand, they don't just look whether breach happened. They look at whether the entity had reasonable process to prevent it. That is very
Okay.
important,
All
right?
right. Mm.
And unknown location, holding card data, that is exactly that kind of thing that turns out a contained incident into a much larger finding, which affect fines, remediation cost, and how payment brands respond and
All right.
and and want to revisit their relationship with the entity going forward. Okay, so the reputational and the relationship risk is there.
Yeah. And what happens if a QSA doesn't question whether the scope is properly defined? Is there any liability on QSAs here? Just out of curiosity. Yeah.
There, I mean, a very tricky question. Okay. So, see, uh, as a QSA, my responsibility is to validate the scope, not to define the scope. Let me give an example. I've been doing an assessment for a big bank in South Asia. We identified a laptop, a computer, isolated, sitting in one of in the room, and we were talking to their manager, and he becomes comfortable about the PCI, the blah blah blah, and that was around the end of the day, like 5 6 p.m. So as and he received an email. Okay, so and what he did, he copied that attachment of that email and start copying in the laptop that's sitting just. And by the way, IES department guys were with us. And
Okay.
that guy asked, I don't remember, did I ask or that guy asked, what what is this laptop? What is this computer? So he said, oh, I receive an email at the every day end, and my responsibility, but so I have to do it before leaving the desk to copy that file in this laptop,
Laptop.
in this.
All right.
So that guy, we asked the question, can you show us what the file is out of curiosity? And he opened the file, and believe me, that was a cardholder data.
All right.
And we asked him why you were copying it. I don't know. I joined like a few months back, and during my orientation, I've been told that you will receive an email. You have to copy the attachment to this this laptop, and by the way, that was a distribution list
All
where
right.
they received the email. Okay, so now we went back to the guy who emailed the file and asked, "Hey, you emailed the file to the particular distribution list. What was the reason?" And you say, "I don't know. I've been onboarded a
Asked
few
to do
months
this.
back, asked to do that."
So everybody
So,
doesn't know, everybody is doing it and copying it into one laptop,
so,
which
so
nobody knows why. So
yeah. So
interesting.
no. just think from I'm just
Yeah.
trying to answer the question is from a QSA perspective. If I was not there, I didn't get chance to uh, see this process. I didn't even know that that should be part of the scope, right?
Yeah, exactly.
So that's why I always say that my responsibility is to validate the scope. But
Yeah.
it's again, I'm not saying that I cannot dance around it.
Yeah.
A QSA job is not to take the entity's scoping document at a face value.
Yeah.
It has to validate it. Okay.
Of
If we
course.
receive a CHD matrix or network diagram, we just sign off without genuinely questioning that it is reflect the reality. We failed the actual purpose of the assessment. Okay,
Yeah.
and the consensus can be abstract or not expert. I mean, if if cardholder data is later found out of scope, we validate it through a breach, a forensic investigation, a, a card brand audit or some regulatory audit that reflect directly on our methodology, right? The question becomes, did we ask the same question? Um,
Mm.
Giving one example, uh, one of our client got breached, okay, and and second, I mean, I started receiving a call from a central bank. You guys did the audit and you didn't
Yeah.
identify this. I say, I mean, but the the challenge is you are telling me that they got breached outside of PCI scope,
Yeah.
right? I'm not supposed to see everything in the, I mean, in the bank. I would say only the scope, right? And
Yeah.
the server that got breached, it was not in the scope of PCI DSS. I mean, luckily, it was
Yeah.
not even
Yeah.
even connected to the card data environment. Any, but you have
Mm.
to educate the. But again, I would say that this we have the responsibility to make sure that uh, that QSA is not for automatically, I would say.
Yeah.
But whenever entity scope turns out to be wrong, in one sense or other, we get questioned.
Yeah.
That's it.
Understand. And that's a very good segue, guys. So we'll be launching a poll, but you'll be seeing it on your screen. So do contribute, and that's a nice segue to see how we can simplify this process through an automated scanning method. So what I'm going to do is we'll do a live demonstration of GuardWare DISCOVER PCI tool that Risk Associate also use, and we'll talk about their experiences shortly. But let me demonstrate that tool now. And in the meantime, do submit your polls once you get a chance. So what I will do is my guys were saying we should do a video. I said, no, let's do live. So this will be, let's do a live demonstration as well. So just bear with me. All right, so I will share my screen here. All right, so um, awesome. So okay, so what and let's so from a GuardWare perspective, let me do a quick intro about GuardWare. So we are a data-centric security provider. We GuardWare originally was dealing with Australian defense. That's where our background comes from. We focus on full end-to-end data governance and data-centric security solution, right from when data is created all the way to its remediation, its protection, and its protection using multiple methods. What you see on the screen at the moment is our overall data-centric security solution that we currently offer, are the solutions that we offer. So Discover is what we will be talking about today. That is a solution that helps you discover sensitive data and also helps you classify that. Today, we are talking about a sub-product of Discover, which is Discover PCI. But overall, once you know what data you have, this GuardWare also provides next-gen DLP capabilities. You monitor it across everything, and we also have cyber awareness as part of that solution. And monitoring also covers things like these days, the talk of the town is AI, what people are pasting in shadow AI tools, and what are they sharing, and how we can control that. So our monitoring goes beyond just the normal a standard corporate level monitoring. It's much more extensive and at a content level. But more importantly, we have a product called GuardWare PROTECT, which actually is a persistent encryption of data while you are actually working on it in use. And that was what was funded by the Australian Defence for us to build in order to protect data, no matter if it gets hacked or stolen, it still remains secure. So in other words, with GuardWare PROTECT, data protects itself. Lastly, we also run an assessment service, and that's the kind of service that QSA companies and other cybersecurity companies use our technology to do assessment as a solution. So overall, we are a full end-to-end data governance and data-centric security solution. So today, our focus is around GuardWare DISCOVER PCI. The key features of Discover PCI solution, the GuardWare Discover solution, obviously it allows you to handle multiple use cases because we are discovering sensitive data. Using the same solution, you can do multiple things like identifying different kinds of information, not just PCI. It also allows you to classify and label information. It also allows you to do data discovery and copy for AI training. This is quite a common use case, new use case that is emerging in the market because AI needs to know what data to actually process. So if you feed rubbish in, rubbish out concept, so it allows you to basically make copies of good data, analyze data, and then feed it into an agentic AI tool. We also have identification, remediation of exposed data, and some other interesting use cases about destroying old data. So data retention and cleanup kind of use cases are also covered using this solution. Now, the solution offers two modes of operation. You can do agentless scanning, which is our preferred model, mostly for most of the organizations that if that's scanning their file servers or their endpoints or M365 environments. I would like to add that as of this month, GuardWare is also supporting G Suite environments. And that's important because I know a lot of organizations are also moving to G Suite or are already on G Suite. We obviously do cover endpoint devices if you need to push an agent-based deployment as well. So both options are available, easy to deploy with zero disruptions. All right. So let's get into the tool here. Guys, you will have an option to ask questions. We will have time at the end. So in the meantime, if you do have questions, do post inside the chat, but we will open it up for other people to ask questions as well. So GuardWare Discover, it has an extensive, sorry, let me just log in. It has an extensive data governance side of things. From a system point of view, there are different types of PCI. Cardholder data is already defined for different regions, different environments, quite an extensive predefined list. You obviously can also define your own data types as well. If you want to further classify that information, you can create data types based on sensitive words or regular expressions or file naming conventions. So multiple models are available. The system also allows you to connect to your classification, M365 classification, or you can define your own classification if there's a need to. And we also have very extensive data owner part inside the system. And this is quite important, and I will show you why. Because when you're doing remediation of cardholder data, you need to interact with the end users, which is causing a lot of pain, especially when you do remediation. Because if you move data which was not required and suddenly is gone, the information owner is going to come after the IT teams to say, what have you done? So there has to be a communication, those workflows, which takes a lot of time and effort for a company to do the job. So we have actually optimized on all that. So here, I have done a scan of credit card information. So this MasterCard data, I can see that it has been scanned. If I go inside it, I can see 17 devices were having, their devices having 17 hit SharePoint and emails. And if I click through the SharePoint, I can see data, cardholder data has been detected in an image. So we do OCR, object character recognition, part of the system. So scan documents, scan cardholder data, all that is covered. and you can actually see PCI scan and information, where's the location, who's the owner, when it was by who it was uploaded by, the user. All that information is there, because sometimes you need to interact with that user to say, sir, can you please delete it or do something with it, right? So you can actually do that interaction. You can mark it as important, not important, because you want to say that important, then I can do one-shot remediation. So fast and simple. You will get snippets from within that data. You can see that information or hide that information. But for the demo, I let it open so that you guys can understand what this information is all about. You can obviously remediate this information. You can move it. You can copy it, make a copy of it rather than deleting it. So you can move data to a secure location, or you can like quarantining basically, or you can copy it like, okay, I don't want to destroy the main data. I'll make a copy and then destroy the data later. So multiple options are available. You can delete it. Okay. You can even classify this information for handling differently later. So it is part of the system. All right. Or you can send an email to the end user to say, sir, can you please classify this data? So the end users, once they have received the email, they'll get an email like this that, okay, Rizwan, can you please, this is the image that you were talking about. This has potential cardholder data. So for an information owner, all they need to do is to click on that particular link, and they can see the cardholder data that they have to remediate, because it's their information. So it's very easy, and decentralized remediation is part of the solution, which is quite important. Obviously, in different situations, you might just want to do central, fast, also possible. All right. So addition to that, the system also has an extensive investigate option. So many you want to further analyze that data and decide how you want to do that. That can also be done. So you move it into the investigation side of things. And then once it's in the investigation side of things, one thing I would like to add, because it's a common question we get, is I, as a assessor, or I, as an IT security person in the company, want to review that file. So you can request the original file within the system for review purposes as well. So you can actually get that data as well, okay, for your review purposes. Now, so and we have put a lot of effort in trying to give as much metadata as possible for people to make remediation easier. Like, who are the owners directly coming from SharePoint ownerships, directly coming from file names and file or metadata. Okay, when was that file created, investigated, when it was modified, all information related to that file. Or if it is an email, the email body, all of it is available. All right. So that's the level of detail that is available. So overall, quite a straightforward, simple to set up systems. You can set up multiple scans. The system allows you to do one-time scans, ongoing scans. So it's a very straightforward, simple system to set up, and easy and fast to roll out. All right. So that's all we have for the demo side of things. Let's go back to the team here. So I have an interesting question which I will cover later by one of the persons who has asked this question, and we'll definitely cover that later. So let's go back to some of the questions that we had related to this. All right. So now that we have covered the automation part of it, the obvious question that comes to me is to Kashif. What were you looking for in a discovery tool, and why did you select GuardWare as a solution for assisting with PCI scoping? Sorry, Kashif, you're on mute. Yeah.
Oh, sorry. I was saying we should run one more scan after the demo that you showed right now. Do we still need to answer this question or not? I think we looked at a handful of tools before landing here, and the requirements were pretty clear for us. That it should be easy, that it should not impact the end users, because whenever we go for compliance, the entities want to get it done Okay, so and should not that should not basically compromise the BAU. So the agentless deployment or the scanning was one of the core feature of the GuardWare that they provided us.
Yeah.
So that means that it does not slow down the scoping phase, the end users BAU. It is very optimal. That does not consume a lot of memory. So we always have a problem like, oh, that's the process that you or the product that you installed is running and consuming a lot of processors, memory, the system is slowing down. That is not a case. The remediation support that you're providing, I would say that helps a lot to entity as well, to us and the entities, because if we identify some data, okay, and so now we cannot close our eyes.
Yeah.
We have to show that there some kind of actions have been performed, okay, either in case of deleting. That's the best approach, I would say, depending
Yeah.
you would need the data or not, because PCI, we have to go back one step back just to answer this question again. Uh, PCI does not restrict you to share the card data. It only says if the card data is there, that should be part of the PCI DSS scope. And then you have to apply the PCI controls accordingly.
Yeah.
So this is, I mean, in a nutshell, the product is so well designed that we receive a lot of very few false positive, because most of the solutions, they basically try to embed or is not designed for the discovery of any data. It's any DLP solution, but they now they want to use it for as a data
Mm.
discovery tool. So the workflow that you have already discussed in the demo. So these are all the features that I think there's no match for this particular space how we have seen. So that's why we opted to use in most of our PCI DSS assessment, and we are getting a very positive feedback from our clients. They are very happy, and as a QSA, we have kind of some confidence assurance that whatever we are signing off is right. So that's I would say that's
No, and that's very heartening to hear, obviously, from GuardWare perspective. And I know, and we always have a lot of genuine, how to say, honest discussions with all our partners and customers, because a lot of these features that we have built is obviously in line with the requirements that we keep getting from the market. And I personally, I like to say that we are almost your extended development arm, because you tell us what you want
yeah.
and we'll get it developed. And that's how the whole thing has matured, I would say,
Mm.
as the product has evolved. Now, there is a second poll that we have launched, guys. When you complete scoping exercise with a client, how confident are you that you have found all cardholder data, including in unstructured repositories? So do contribute, and we will see how the result comes from that. And in the meantime, Kashif, let me ask you another question, which is
Mhm.
related to, this is interesting. So PCI DSS 4.0 has been tightening requirements around scoping documentation, data retention, incident response when cardholder data is found outside the defined CDEs. From your perspective as a QSA, has the standard made a tool like this a must-have rather than a nice-to-have?
Okay, so you basically touch three things in the question that are actually three separate pressure points. Okay, and they
All right.
all but they all have the same direction.
Okay.
Okay, start with the easiest one, the documentation. So the PCI 4.0.1 introduce a new requirement 12.5.2 that says
Mm,
entity has to confirm with evidence. The importance of the evidence that card holder data is not showing up, is not exist outside the CDE, at least annually. And in the case of service provider, you have to do biannually. Okay. Uh, and that should be done before the assessment and document well enough that assessor can review how the conclusion were reached. We look and didn't see anything. It's not documentation. So you need to have a methodology. You need to show your work that's basically the infrastructure and the data does not exist outside of the CDE, or whatever you are saying that your scoping, your scope
Yeah,
environment is. Okay. So then you're talking about the retention. Okay. The standard is very clear that the cardholder data should not exist longer than the business or the legal need. Whatever you can define, you can say 2 months, you can say 3 years, you can say 7 years, but you have to define a retention period. Okay, but the requirement only, but that requirement only means something if you actually know where you have the cardholder data is, because you cannot enforce the retention policy on a spreadsheet that you, or the email, or any data that you don't even know, okay, that are already gone, right? So the retention compliance is downstream of discovery. If your scoping process cannot find the data outside the CDE, your retention control basically have a blind spot by definition. Okay, it is not really the retention problem, but it's a visibility problem that you basically you discussed in the beginning as well, right?
yeah,
So so at the end of the day, it gives you the visibility, clarity where your card data exists. And then you talk about the incident response. Okay, so that one I think is a more particularly if the card holder data turns up somewhere outside the CDE and the standard accepted to define its response. How did it get there? Okay, is it still there? It has been for removed or properly protected, and what changes in your process so it does not happen again. Trying answering that in the middle of a real incident using only annual sampling. You don't have a current picture. That's the thing. Uh, so it's very cumbersome. In a nutshell, if you see that the three main important things: retention, your documentation, your incident response, but all of them have the same roots. So
yeah.
you have to need to know your data is so you can protect it accordingly.
Yeah, and that's interestingly, so the poll also so poll questions are coming that it's 40 and 60%. Mostly 60% is not very confident. We know where the gaps where there are gaps, the manual process cannot close. So I think there is definitely a need for more automation and speed of managing this thing, which is so it looks like guys are also people are also concurring on that. And we are getting some more questions through. So let me ask let me ask you one final question, and I love to leave time here for the guys who have asked some of these questions. So I think the last question would be about, can you walk us through what happens when a payment forensic investigator gets involved and finds that the scope was wrong? So what kind of what does it looks like for a company? Yeah.
I mean, who involves a payment investigator? PFI, we say payment forensic investigator, definitely the payment brands themselves, they identify something. So that is a very serious scenario. Okay, so let's talk through it properly. First thing first, we have already discussed that under the PCI that you have the entity maintain a formal documentation and the confirmation that what their card data environment CD is, right? The first thing, whenever the PFI is involved, they want to reconstruct the real scope. So the first question they ask, are you PCI DSS certified? Right? So if the entity says, yes, we are PCI DSS certified, they want to see the ROC, report on compliance, because the report on compliance is the Bible of the entity's card data environment. It lists on every single thing. Okay. So they want to reconstruct the real scope. They see the rock that if the breach happened, and from where the breach was happened, it was in the scope or not. Okay, so that is the first fundamental question that they ask. Then it can be a challenge for, if you go back to your previous question from a QSA perspective, it can be a serious problem for QSA as well. Like what was the methodology adopted to confirm that the scope was accurate and the
Okay.
entity's methodology, how they basically define the scope. Okay, and so this means it's not properly documented. Okay, so the from the both side, the consequences, I would say, escalate very quickly, because the payment reports, the forensics reports go back to the uh, card brands or the regulators, and it typically results in expanding remediation requirements. Then, so this is the, I would say, the nutshell. This can be very haunting for any organization to see that if PFI is involved, identify the first thing they identify, the scope was correct or not,
Yeah.
and what's all the methodology behind that.
Let's go to the questions that are being asked by the audience. And first question is something that I'll handle because related to our GuardWare Protect solution. Is GuardWare Protect quantum resistant? You can say it uses hybrid encryption, so the files are encrypted using AES 256-bit encryption, but still using RSA, which we are moving to ECC later this year. We do key rotation, Michael. Happy to take that offline. My email will be available as well. It's happy to reach out. I'd love to discuss further about this thing because we have a roadmap of how we can make it compliant. It's just a matter of requirement from our side, because since we are using a library, we can simply replace that library with quantum safe crystal kyber or something like that. All right. Now, the second question is quite related to what we are having here. Citizen is asking us a very interesting question, I must say, actually. It's organizations adopt AI for documentation, monitoring, and reporting. So question arises, can AI-generated logs or summaries be accepted as audit evidence? How should a QSA verify AI products or AI-produced artifacts?
So this is a very, I mean, this is a very interesting question. Yeah, that the
Yeah,
reason being,
very pertinent to what is happening in the world,
yeah,
right?
in the
AI will
world
take
right
over.
now,
Okay.
and this
Yes.
is the hot topic in the QSA community as well.
Yeah.
Okay,
Okay. Yeah.
we are discussing with the PCI Council, because by the PCI Council has published a document on how the QSA should be using or using the AI in their assessments. Okay,
Mm.
so up till now, I would say that there's no harm in using the documentation with the AI, but you have to see again. My question, because I always go back to the scope, so I will always go back to the scope. Is if your the AI agent or AI processes are touching the card data environment, so if they come in the scope, what are the consequences? So. So this is something, I mean, is very interesting to discuss. But in a nutshell, I would say that uh, it's a scope at the end of the day. Yeah.
Yeah. So I would imagine that you can probably accept the results from AI
Yeah.
generated, but obviously you need to validate that. So
We need
because
to validate. We
yeah,
also need to check the how they are collecting or
generating those logs.
generating
Yeah.
the content.
Yeah.
So it becomes the scope of the piece, because it is in the scope of PCI, is an isolated system, or I gave you an example. Uh, Not related to AI, but one thing happened that we identified a bank very segmented scope of PCI DSS. Okay, so everything is very properly segmented. We had their segmentation reports. We get the firewall rule set reviewed. Everything was fine, but we identified there is a reporting server. So they all the data they're pushing to the reporting server. Okay, some data warehouse, and all the bank systems are integrated with that data warehouse. So what happened? It all of a sudden complete bank comes in the scope of PCI DSS.
Mm.
Okay,
Yeah.
so we have to look at this. I mean, at the end of the day, using the documentation or that's not a challenge. It's all about the scope that we define how it's interacting with the card data environment.
Okay. I hope, Citizen, that answers your question, but happy to take this offline, mate. If you can send us an email or something, love to carry this conversation forward. One more thing I would like to add, if Tom, can we share the screen for the last thing? So as part of this webinar, whoever is joining the webinar, we are offering a free GuardWare DISCOVER PCI related assessment. Let me share my screen again. Okay, here you go. Tom has shared it. Thank you. Thanks, Matt. It's assess your risk. So we will scan 2 GB of data and we'll produce a result for you. Actually, it doesn't take 3 weeks, to be honest. It's probably take a day. I don't know. I think that's a, if we do an extended assessment, so it's, don't worry, it's not going to take 3 weeks to do this. Everything is quite fast. Within a day, you'll be able to scan 2 GB of data. There's nothing. And you'll be able to see live how this actually works. So a free offer for you. We can set it up. Please scan and put in your details. And yeah, we can get going with it. So anybody who is a participant of this, will do this free of charge for you to analyze, check, and learn from it. So if anybody has any additional questions, I will leave my email in the chat here as well for people to reach out directly to me as well. Oh, yeah. Yeah, so definite, Michael, we should have a chat. Excuse me. I'm just trying to find the chat option here. I will reach out to you, Michael, as well. And if otherwise, if we don't have, all right, chat here. Finally found the chat option. Okay, let me put my email is rizwan.m@guardware.com.au. Or you can reach out to Richard, who was on the previous screen. So yeah, please reach out and we will follow up. So thank you so much for attending, unless there's no more questions, but I see they're not. So all good. Let's carry on. And thank you, Kashif, for giving your valuable time. It was lovely talking to you. A lot of eye-opener things there for me, because I don't directly deal with cardholder data. This is one of our areas. Well, definitely a lot of learnings, and shows how complex this environment is. So thank you so much for attending, and thanks for all the attendees who took some time to listen to us. Have a great rest of the day. Thank you so much. Cheers.
Thank you, Rizwan. Thank you, everyone.
Bye.